The first part of the question is defining who the scholars are. What has happened is there are a group of brothers, like you said. There's no doubt that our deen encourages us to take from the ulama. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Ask the people of knowledge if you don't know. So there are a lot of things about our religion that we don't know. It's our obligation at that point, if we're not from the people of ijtihad or from the students of knowledge who can go back and study the issues for themselves, then you have to go to somebody whose knowledge you respect, whose God consciousness and taqwa you respect, and you go to them and you ask them, okay? Oh, the concept in the Prophet ﷺ has, many ahadith that talk about the virtue of the scholars. This is something that is undeniable. I would hope that no Muslim denies the virtue of the scholars. The problem is when we get a group of people who champion that, but then they define for everybody else who the scholars are. So the scholars are the people who they have a connection with. And the point is to monopolize authenticity of da'wah. So no da'wah is authentic unless we've sanctioned it. And we sanction it. We have that ability to sanction. We are the accrediting body that sanctions whether or not this da'wah is correct or not. We are the accrediting body because we have been given that authority by the scholars. Well, the question is, who gave you the right to determine for the people in the West that these are the scholars? Okay, this is the first question. There's a very important point here, and it's not to deny the scholarship of the ones that they are saying are scholars, because they may or may not be. That's not really my issue here. Why are they the only scholars that we can refer to? And if we go outside of those 4 or 5 who they have determined and declared to be the scholars, then we are not going back to the right scholars or whatever their situation may be. So I mean, that the first part of their logic that's flawed is that they are trying to tell us who the scholars are, when in fact the scholars of Islam have recognized many more people, and some of them more prominently than the ones that they have set up to be scholars in the West, without going into any names. All right, so that's the first thing that has to be dealt with. The second thing is that there's almost a degree of self-hate that is involved in that, or a lack of self-worth. And if we look at it, every other country, besides us gullible Western brothers, every other country has their own scholars. They may not be on the level of the scholars here who have dedicated their entire lives to the study of Islam. But if you go to Nigeria, there are scholars. If you go to Senegal, there are scholars. If you go to Pakistan, there are scholars. India, there are scholars, so on and so forth, right? So we have gotten to the point that we can't even recognize our own scholarship. That there may perhaps be people in the United States of America who can answer a large amount of the questions that we have. And that doesn't mean that they're going to be able to answer every question, or that they're from the kibarul ulama or to the end of it. But that's not the condition that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala laid down in the Quran or from the Sunnah of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. The person needs to know about what they're talking about. Doesn't mean they have to be from the kibarul ulama, where they are what we would call encyclopedic in their knowledge, right? No, but if you ask them about Islamic finance, they can answer that. If you ask them about ibadat, then this person can answer that. But what's happened is we've denied our own scholarship, in the name of propping up these other scholars, or in the name of respecting these other scholars. And so as such, we turn our backs on the fact that, hey, maybe we need to be further supporting our own scholars. And again, scholarship is of different levels, and maybe this person is not a scholar, but he's a solid student of knowledge who can deal with this particular, contemporary issue that has come up. Or we have bodies of scholars, because we have, in the West, we have certain bodies of scholars who, when they get together, I think that their scholarship is noteworthy. It's something that should at least be taken into consideration, and we shouldn't just ignore the fact, that we do have some people of knowledge among us in the West who can help deal with some of these issues. So I think that diversion tactic that is used is because it is profitable to the people who use it. And I'm not saying that I'm not talking about intention here, that every single person that says, hey, you need to follow the scholars, that this is their idea, that they're looking for something outside of what they really believe is the truth. But I'm keenly aware that there are some that definitely profit from the fact that they seem to have this monopoly on what is authentic dawah.
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I wanted to use this opportunity to re-emphasize a very important point that Šejh Tahir Wyatt made in a video entitled Monopolizing the Scholars, because this point has a lot to do with our progress as Muslims in the West. Now, in the video, Šejh Tahir was pointing out that there are different levels of scholarship, and this is crucial because there are people in the West who think that when it comes to academia, everything is black and white. Either you are from the kibar al-ulama, you are from the major scholars who are encyclopedic in their understanding of Islam, the most knowledgeable people in this world, or you're not, and therefore you're nobody. There's no in between. And by doing this, we waste our own resources and undermine the people in our countries who have attained a certain level of knowledge. Even though they might not be from the kibar al-ulama, the major scholars, they've still reached a certain level of scholarship where they can teach, they can answer questions, and they can fulfill certain roles in the community. And I will give you a very clear and simple example to prove this point. Let's say there's a math teacher in the US who is qualified to teach elementary school math. If someone approaches that teacher and asks them, does 2 times 2 equal 4? Then the teacher is qualified to answer that question. He doesn't have to go overseas and ask the topmost mathematicians the answer to 2 times 2 equals 4. In fact, it would be ridiculous and it would be an obvious waste of time. However, if he's asked the question about high school math or college math, he needs to know the limits of his knowledge. And he has to admit when he doesn't know. And then it is upon him to ask somebody who has more knowledge than him. And perhaps nobody in his country has enough knowledge to answer that question, in which he would need to go overseas and refer back to those who are knowledgeable enough to respond. Saudi Arabia spends a countless amount of money and resources on students from other countries so that they can come to Medina, learn about Islam, and then return to their countries and teach the people. In fact, you'll find that it seems more likely for an individual to get accepted to study at the university if they are native to the country that they're coming from. They want us to become imams, teachers, shuyukh, scholars. This is why they invest in the students. They want us to be able to walk on our own 2 feet and not have to refer every single matter back to them, because that's how Islam will flourish. It's not about them having a powerful monopoly over every single situation in every single other country. It's about people learning, implementing, and teaching Islam to the best of their ability. The scholars here in Medina, you'll see people rushing them in the masjid, after salat, in the streets. Crowds of students will approach them and ask them questions. And some of these questions are simple. Other people far less qualified can answer these questions. When you do that, you're not only wasting the sheikh's time, but you're also wasting the resources of the Muslims. You're wasting the money that Saudi Arabia invested in these students, and you're wasting the time of the scholars who taught these students. These scholars don't want to be bothered with your questions, how do I read alif ba ta? They don't have time. You're wasting their time and you're wasting your own time. And what Šejh Tahir was pointing out is that this idea that nobody in our country has any respectable amount of knowledge is something that is rather unique to people in the West. You don't find this sort of thing in other countries. Even here in Saudi Arabia, you don't find that. The people understand there are different levels of scholarship. There are people who are not from the major scholars, but they've still reached a certain level of knowledge where they're qualified to teach students in the Islamic University of Medina. They'll teach the students. Students will ask them questions. Sometimes the teacher will answer the question. Sometimes the teacher will say, this is beyond my knowledge. You need to refer to the kibar al-ulama, the major scholars on this matter. They understand that here in Saudi Arabia. They understand that here at the Islamic University of Medina. Why can't we understand that in the West? Here in Saudi Arabia, not only was Šejh Tahir honored with being able to teach in the Prophet's masjid, but there was another American student who was honored with teaching his own class in the Arabic Institute at the Islamic University of Medina. When I was a student in the Arabic Institute, Sheikh Rashid Ahmadi had his own class. He was a student from America earning his master's degree. And the Islamic University of Medina recognized that he reached a certain level of scholarship where he was qualified to teach his own class at the Islamic University of Medina in the Arabic Institute. So you'll find that Americans come to Saudi Arabia, study their religion, and get more respect from the Islamic University of Medina, from the administration, from the scholars here, than they do back home from their own people, from their own communities. Brothers in the West don't even want to refer to them in respectful terms. Sheikh is a term reserved for the kibar al-ulama in this country. They'll say, don't call Tahir Wyatt Sheikh, call him brother, brother Tahir Wyatt. But that's strange because people who you would refer to as Sheikh in this country, what do they call Tahir Wyatt? They refer to him as Sheikh. In fact, you'll find that teachers here will call students far less qualified than Tahir Wyatt Sheikh. This doesn't mean that this individual is from the kibar al-ulama because someone called them Sheikh. It's a means of encouragement, of respect, of recognizing, yes, this individual did study, they did reach a certain level of scholarship. And it's okay to respect and appreciate that. But if people in the US are incapable of doing such things, it shows that, one, they're either gullible in a sense that somebody misled them, or two, it's a clear sign of self-hatred. We think so little of ourselves that even if somebody goes to Medina and studies for 20 years, they teach in Masjid al-Nabawi, they earn their PhD, they still haven't reached an honorable status. Why? Because they're from the US. They're from the West. They're from our country. We don't know anything. We can't learn anything. We can't become scholars or shuyukh. This is a clear sign of self-hatred. So if you watch the video of Šejh Tahir objectively, you'll see that he never called away from the scholars of Islam. He never said we should cut ties with them. He never said that they couldn't understand our situation in the West. On the contrary, he said that the virtues of the scholars is undeniable. But the point is that there are different levels of scholarship, and in the West, if we want to grow, if we want to advance, we have to take advantage of our own scholarship. And when people try to monopolize the scholars and act like there's only a few people in another country that we can refer to, it causes countless problems, but it definitely stifles our progress in America. And this behavior is not from Islam. It's not how they act here in Saudi Arabia. It's not how they act here at the Islamic University of Medina. So why is there a few individuals in the West that get people to act this way? So in conclusion, anybody who twisted Šejh Tahir's words and slandered him, I'd encourage such individuals to fear Allah. Allah knows the reality of what such people are doing. He knows the effects that it's having on the Muslim community. And there's no doubt that they are accountable to Allah for these actions. If that doesn't strike fear in your heart, then I do not know what will. And I would like to ask any brothers, if I wronged you, please forgive me. And likewise, if you wronged me, I will forgive you. Because we're brothers in Islam. There's enough enemies of Islam that want to exterminate us, attack us, threaten us. We don't need to be bickering amongst each other. We're all on the same team. When Šejh Tahir earns his PhD, he's going to help your team win. When Mufti Muhammad ibn Munir earns his master's degree and he takes on an imam position and he's giving da'wah all over the country, that's going to help your team win. If they lead us to win the championship, you're going to get a ring too, akhi. Don't be mad that you're not going to be the MVP. That's the qadr of Allah. We're not all built like that. But maybe you can get some assists. Maybe you can get some rebounds. You might be able to hit the winning shot. We're all on the same team. So let's all play our positions and make sure that we're defending the right goal and we're scoring against the right team. May Allah guide us all to what's best. Jazakumullahu khairan wa salamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.